Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Welcome, everybody. Before we begin, picture this. You're sitting in a room full of people who see the world differently. Think outside every box and turn chaos into creativity. And now imagine if somebody told you that your scattered thoughts, your bursts of energy, and even your struggles are actually signs of brilliance. Today on Authors on Mission podcast, we're diving headfirst into the extraordinary world of the ADHD brain with Sue Day, author of ADHD Brilliance, A Journey into Your Extraordinary Brain. Sue's story is more than overcoming challenges. It's about revolutionizing how we see those challenges in the first place. From dropping out of high school to becoming a successful nonprofit finance professional, from burnout to breakthrough, Sue's journey proves that perhaps what the world needs is your greatest superpower waiting to be unleashed in what you used to think was your limitation. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer here at Authors on Mission, and we're not just talking about an interview here, we're decoding the DNA of the success so you can write your own story as well. Without further ado, we're going to discover why your brain might be your most brilliant asset. Welcome to the podcast, Sue Day.
Thank you so much. What a fabulous introduction. And I'm so glad your podcast is here. What a really important mission you have.
Thank you for that. We love, having authors on, sharing their stories, giving us insights about their work and also the writing process. And I think you just have some incredible insights from both realms. I think this is something that everybody can relate to and draw some meaning from. So I'm really excited to dive on it. I do always like to start with a little bit of background about my guests, and I gave a little bit of a tidbit of your history in that introduction there. I'm wondering if you don't mind, kind of taking us back to 1988 when you were diagnosed with ADHD. What was that experience like, and what led you to eventually writing it down in a book?
I got diagnosed in 1988, and they didn't even think girls had ADHD then, for the most part. I mean, they knew it was in the DSM by then that girls could have ADHD, but it was not common. And so because of that, I think a lot of people disbelieved. And there's always been this sort of realm of disbelief around ADHD. It's an invisible challenge that, in 1 minute we can be super amazing and productive, and the next moment we can not know how to brush our teeth in the morning. So there's this, people just don't believe that it's a real challenge, and that was really true in the 80s. And so, I didn't really take it seriously. My parents didn't take it seriously. And I continued on with my life, I didn't medicate. I just continued on with my life the way I had been. It gave me a little bit of understanding for myself, which I think was really important in my future successes. But it also sort of created a little bit of a divide between myself and my family, or myself and sort of the rest of the world, who's like, what do you mean you have ADHD? What is that even? I don't believe it. It's just an excuse. You're really actually just lazy and obstructive. And it sort of felt like whenever somebody says they don't believe, we have something like that, it just feels like they're saying the opposite is true. And that's, it's a really hard sort of reality to live with that kind of judgment as well.
Yeah, and I can see how it is such a struggle, and there are many different viewpoints on it. So I guess it must have been a matter of coming to terms with your own perception of it and seeing it as that strength, as we discussed a little bit in the introduction there. I'm sure it wasn't an easy path, but you're able to find a way to, benefit and see all the positive sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Am I correct? Understanding that about myself was really important.
Definitely. And then you kind of just grew from that and you continued on. I mean, you had a failed business experience and you ended up in nonprofit finance before writing all this book. So do you want to speak a little bit about how that also contributed to your journey?
Sure. As you mentioned, I dropped out of high school. I did go to college on time, went to 5 colleges in 10 years. And so I'm always seeking something, right? That's one of the really beautiful things about ADHD is you're always, for me, it's as I'm always seeking something. And that has sort of empowered me to make sure that I'm going in the direction that's important to me. So my failed business, I was a sustainable landscaper. It was a fantastic business, but I wasn't ready for it. Didn't have enough control of my ADHD. I needed the structure of a career, of a boss, to be responsible to. And so I started working for nonprofits and very quickly became a director of finance and administration because even though my business was financially a failure, I still learned so much in the 10 years that I ran it. And so I learned how to keep track of finances, and I learned how to do human resources. And, so I learned all that, and I was able to apply that to my next career. And that has been a theme throughout my life. That's sort of how I ended up in the nonprofit finance realm. People don't quite understand actually just how creative a profession finance is. And so when I was able to do finance, it sort of involved both the hyper focus of the spreadsheets, which is something my brain loves. It's just like sit down and like sort of meditate on numbers. But then also this really creative, like, okay, so we need to figure out how to do this with this money. It's really important that we do this with this money, but the says, we should maybe do something over here. So let's figure out how to tell the story that really proves that we are doing that with the money, even though we're also doing this. So it was a sort of enjoyable creativity as well as the sort of meditation of the numbers.
Yeah, and I can see how that creativity kind of blossomed from all those experiences. And, it's just really good to know that you went through all of that, and then here you are now, and you became a coach eventually through all of these different experiences. As I was looking through materials, you phrased it as embracing your quirky brilliance. So I'm wondering, would you like to speak a little bit more about that? What does that phrase mean to you personally? And, how has that helped you to help so many other people?
Yeah, so I think I've mentioned before, and it's sort of a theme throughout my life, is as I really focus on strength. And even when there's failure, where is it showing me the strengths, right? And because I have a different brain than 90% of the population, and even different than the 10% of the population that may have ADHD. ADHD is knowing how to get your brain to focus on things. And so you need to focus on where your strengths are. And even if that's different, so you need to sort of find your own path, and often that's different. And that's, I think, sure what makes it quirky and unique is that we're actually not necessarily even capable of moving in sort of this linear path that a lot of people sort of consider life as sort of you go through this on this linear path through life. And I'm not sure ADHDers so much are even capable of it. So embracing our quirkiness, embracing our uniqueness, and embracing those strengths that come with it is sort of the key to my success.
Understood. Yeah, and like I think so far in this podcast we've really honed in on that. It's so important to embrace who you are and seeing it as strength. And it's just, basically the entire approach that we're talking about today. But you also turn this into a 4-step transformational journey, which is kind of the framework in your book. I'm wondering if you'd like to walk us through this a little bit, and so that we know a little bit more about what to expect from the book when we pop on in and see how it can benefit us. What is this 4-step?
Yeah. So I have to refer to notes here because ADHD working memory is somewhat, even though I wrote the book, I still need to remember. So the first step is to unveil your brilliance. And that's basically what we've been talking about, finding your strengths and figuring out how not to throw dirt on them, how to find your strengths and celebrate them instead of saying, oh, everybody has that strength, or oh, everybody can do that, or oh, I did that, but it wasn't really that good, which we do a lot of. Right. And so finding your strengths and really embracing them. The next step is to craft your mission. And that's basically finding like, okay, I have these strengths. What do I want to do with them? How do I figure out how to live in my strengths and embrace who I really am and create goals around that? And then the next step is, because we do have ADHD and we are living and working in a society where our ADHD brains aren't always appreciated and we're certainly not always accommodated for, what accommodations do you need to create for yourself to move forward into your favorite life? And so it's sort of building a toolbox of like, where do you, like, if I hit a bump in the road, what do I need? And then the final step is just to bring it all together and create sort of a personal operations manual of how do I make my brain work moving forward in my favorite life. And because working memory, and we need to sort of anchor and revisit and reiterate lots of things. So what do I need to reference in order to sort of move forward? Because the work's not over when you're done with the book. It's, it's a lifelong journey. So
Thank you for giving us a little sneak peek into what this is. It's always good to know what to expect from a book like this, which one of these might be most useful to the reader themselves. And just to know when we dive right in, we'll be learning even more details about all of those. I'm sure that each one is packed with examples and case studies and some actionable steps. Would I be correct in assuming it is an amazing strategy? Is that what how you framed it as well?
yes, yeah. So it is basically, as you go through the journey. For one, it's when you're frustrated with the tips and tricks, right? When the brain hacks aren't cutting it. When you feel like, you know what? I need more than a Pomodoro timer and some body doubling. I need to actually really figure out how to move into my life, into my authentic self, so that everything's less of a struggle. And I do find a lot of people get to this point once they get burnt out. So I love to encourage people to take a breath and acknowledge that perhaps it's a good idea to do the work before you get to a point where you're stuck and burnt out and things are not going super well. And that's, the book is really, it's a lot of deep work about, how to live your life in a way that's not going to get, so that you're not going to get to that point. So it's sort of a burnout prevention or, guide almost. So I think that's sort of where it is. If you're sick of the tips and tricks and all the hacks that work for a minute and then go away, then that's the next, the next step is to really do some of that deep work that's important for really creating a deep foundation for where you need to go.
Understood. Okay, so you need to kind of analyze, where at, if you're ready for it, if you're ready to, take that on. I can see how it's not for the faint of heart now. Sorry to interrupt you, though. If you don't mind, you can go back and let me know a little bit more. The question before I had jumped right in is the structure of these frameworks. I had asked you a little bit about, when you're reading this, we have some examples, some case studies. It's probably backed by some research. I'm wondering if you could walk us through a little bit of, what that all entails, what else to expect. And I'm sorry, I did derail
Yeah.
your question before.
No worries at all. I'm glad we went down that path. It was a good one. So it's written in two parts. So the first part is really just an accessible, research-backed brief overview of ADHD. And I wrote that part. I never even intended to write any of this personally, actually, but I wrote that first part after I wrote the second part, because I get really tired of ADHD sort of being considered sort of flippantly in reels and on TikTok, and not only flippantly, but sometimes without any basis in fact. And ADHD is actually a pretty significantly serious trait. If we don't take care of ourselves and our ADHD, we can really end up in trouble. We have super high divorce rates. We have high incarceration rates. We have high substance use rates, and our life expectancy is quite a bit shorter, even shorter than a lifelong smoker. So it's something to really take seriously. And I wanted, though this is not a deep dark hole, and I think you can tell, I don't consider ADHD a deep dark hole. I consider it a gift, and it comes with tremendous strengths. But I think it's really important to take it seriously. And if you don't take it seriously, then you can end up in that deep dark hole. So the first part is sort of an accessible, easy to read, fact-based, research-based overview of ADHD. And the second part, and throughout the entire book, the first and the second parts, is peppered with anecdotes from my personal life and how sort of these things, either how I moved through these exercises or how different parts of the research affected my life. So.
Understood. And I think the main thing that it's so important for all of us to take away from this, and it is something to be taken seriously. And I can see how that's kind of your mission behind this book as well, not only seeing a positive light, but taking it seriously. And you're right. I mean, so many people these days, it's social media, it's going viral, this certain joke about it, but it's not to be joked about. It's completely serious, and it's backed by, hundreds of years of studies and research. And it's amazing that you have this out there to shine a little light on it and show people this is real, this is how we can deal with it, and here are some tips. So I think it's very powerful what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you said something in your introduction, which was really important to me, which is that we have a lot of people consider it a disability, and it is a disability in our current society. But we have gifts that our society needs. Thinking outside of the box, thinking creatively, our society needs our gifts. And I really it's so important for me to help people see that these are gifts in a way. And yes, they make your life hard. And also they're gifts to help us and move forward in this amazing world that we have, and hopefully make it a better place.
Understood. Yeah, and it's great that you have done all of this, and a good time to transition into the book itself and sort of the writing process behind all of this, because being that you're working with such an important topic, something that you have to really clearly to the readers, while also keeping them engaged and keeping them very action-oriented, must have been quite a struggle. Did you use an outline when you were developing the book? Did it kind of just come to you? What was that day-to-day process like?
Yeah, so I think I'm what authors call pantser. So right by the seat of my pants. I did over time create an outline to help me reorganize it as I needed to. And I didn't mean to write it. That's the funniest thing. And one of the great things about being maybe a pantser or being an ADHDer is, it sort of it just happened in a really important way. And so I was trying to create some structure for my clients with these worksheets. And then my clients had a hard time keeping track of the worksheets and the homework I was giving them throughout our sessions. And so I started making a workbook for them. And then I realized that all these blogs I've been writing were related to the worksheets. And so I started putting the blogs in amongst the worksheets. I'm like, oh, wow, that's already got sort of half a book here. And where do I want it to go from here? And it just started getting more and more exciting. Like, I can really share this with way more people. And one of my missions is to make ADHD coaching really accessible to everybody, because it is, regardless of income, because it's such a powerful way to manage ADHD symptoms. And one of the most fun parts was making it so that it was easy to read as an ADHDer. And so it's broken up with, fun little, I did all the internal design myself. I had an illustrator who helped me, but it's broken up with illustrations and anecdotes, and it's in a larger font, and it's 8 by 11. So it's really, you have enough sort of space to move through it. So it's written really with an ADHD brain in mind. And I don't know if I really finished answering your question, but so feel free to redirect me if you need to.
No, I think you gave us a great overview of it. It kind of, the writing process shaped itself from all the different mediums of content that you have, being it from blogs and so on and so forth. But you of course, had to target it to those who would be needing it most. And I guess, the next step then is, what about the revision process? You wrote this, and then were you working with a team perhaps, or did you kind of take it on yourself, or how did that work?
Yeah, so because my book is a little unique and I was writing it in a unique way, my husband was a huge part of my revision process. He helped me through the first several iterations of it. And then I had an editor who was great. I think her company is called Mo Reads You. And she did a great job of allowing me to frustrate her through the process. And because I never feel like anything's done. So I would only give her pieces of the book at a time. And she's like, I need the whole book. And like, well, we'll get there. It's just not there yet. So was really helpful with sort of helping me make sure that it made sense and it read well throughout the whole book, and it was, of course, grammatically correct and all that. So, and then I had my Becky from Miss Digital Media in the UK. Actually, she taught me how to do the interior design for the book. So I learned how to use InDesign in order to make this, because I didn't feel like I could hand it off to a book designer, because it's just too different than what other people are doing with their books.
Right. Well, either way, it's great to have a team by your side. It's great that you found the right editor that worked well with you and was able to elevate your manuscript to the next level. A lot of people think that writing is a solo job, but it's not. It requires a lot of other people with their hands in the pie that make it the best it could possibly be. You have to open
Absolutely, and you can craft that team depending on what you need and what you want, and which is what I did. I worked with a great team that I was able to, I crafted that team to found the right people to help me in the right ways. So the team isn't the same for everybody. I guess it's sort of where I'm going with that.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, the editor that works for you might not work for another person, depending on the style of the book, the content, their prior knowledge, all of that stuff wrapped together. Yeah. So I'm wondering, just moving along a little bit about the writing process, what was the most difficult part of putting everything into the book? It must have been challenging to think of your own personal examples, weave that into the academic insights, the strategies. Can you share a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, so it was really hard to have the courage or the faith that what I was writing was useful and made sense to people. I had a ton of imposter syndrome, and I think that was like my biggest challenge, was just having this imposter syndrome where I just like, well, what if nobody likes it? What if nobody reads it? What if it's not useful for people? And I really almost had to put blinders on and just put that thought aside and not think about it for the whole time. And that sort of also was my ADHD brain. I like being able to sort of hyper focus on something, and I was just able to hyper focus and move through that. I still get it. Still get the imposter syndrome all the time, but it sort of being able to ignore it while acknowledging that, like, yes, it's there. It was helpful to be able to sort of compartmentalize that.
Yeah, understood. And we're all battling with our own inner demons, whether it be imposter syndrome or something else. So it's a matter of working through it, and I can see how it is hand in hand with ADHD and all the strategies that you do present. So I think it's wonderful that you address that. So I'm wondering, do you happen to have a copy of the book with you here today?
Yes, I do. It's right here.
You do? Okay, awesome. Mm-hmm. I love that. We got some flowers in full bloom, very hopeful and cheerful.
Yeah, so it represents the brain and all the wonder. It's a tree, but it also represents the brain and all the wonder.
Oh, well, I didn't even realize that at the first glance. I can see how it is now. I love that. And your name's up at the top. It's a nice, right by the sunshine. So it's exactly what you would expect from this type of book to get you drawn into it if you were the reader.
I also had a great illustrator and cover designer to do. So part of my team was also, she did a wonderful job with that.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, there you go. The importance of that team, no matter what the field is, you can always reach out to somebody and ask them for a little bit of extra help. So all this being said, Sue, I'm wondering if you happen to have any pieces of advice to our listeners today before we sign off, any bits about dealing with ADHD or the writing process, or both of them together?
Yeah, so this is my biggest struggle, and that I'm still working on now, is don't ignore the distribution process and get somebody to help you who knows how the book distribution process works, because it is a very complex mechanism out there. So that's my biggest end of the road advice. But in general, throughout the process, write what you're passionate about, especially for ADHDers, right? This our brains are interest based. We actually don't really lack focus. We lack focus on things that bore us and things that aren't, interesting, and we don't have filters. So if something's not interesting enough to hold our attention, we lose it. So if you're an ADHD and you're writing a book, it's super important for you to write what's interesting to you, and also figure out how to remember that that's interesting to you. So how to remind yourself, like, what's so amazing about this subject and this book. How are you going to move forward with that?
I love that. Yeah, and I love the point that you made about it having to mean a lot to you and to the reader also. Target audience is a huge thing, but writing about something you're passionate about is a whole nother ballpark. So that's an amazing insight right there. Making sure the topic aligns with what your heart truly wants. So I'm wondering, if people are interested in learning a little bit more about what you have to offer today, where can they go to find you and click the links and learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. So my website has everything that you could need on it. So it's pathwaysforwardcoaching.com. So it's a little bit of a mouthful, but my book has a page there, and there's all my socials are linked to it. And it has all about how to work with me in lots of various ways. I do group coaching for free. I have all sorts of free programs, and I have paid programs. And so you can reach out and work with me in whatever works for you.
All right. Well, Sue, that's really incredible. We're going to put the links to that in the description box of this podcast today. If you're inspired and want to learn a little bit more about Sue, go ahead and click on over after this podcast, everybody. And Sue, what else on this website is exciting for us to know about that we should check out when we head on over?
So there's a pop-up. Don't be afraid of it, and hopefully not too annoying. It's for signing up to my email, which is, I promise, not a spam mail. So you get no more than one email a week from me if you sign in, and it's do a Substack and a newsletter, and they think they're both been found to be very helpful for folks with ADHD. So.
Well, perfect. Thank you for that. That's an amazing resource to have. So yeah, don't be afraid, guys. Put your email on in there and, subscribe and stay up to date to everything Sue has to say. It's an important topic. Go ahead, click on over, learn a little bit more, and just stay in touch, stay connected. So with all of that said and done, Sue, I think this has been a wonderful conversation. We talked a lot about ADHD, a bunch about the book. I'm wondering, what else is on the horizon for you next up? We have this book out, you're offering your consulting. Anything else on the repertoire we could be looking forward to?
Well, I am sort of working towards considering what I want to do with the book next, right? So it is basically a course in its own. So I am thinking about starting a group coaching program that's based on the book, that takes you through the book, and that I may do one live, and I may also do one recorded. So I think those are the next things that are going to happen with the book itself, besides it hopefully finally being available sort of widely at bookstores and things like that.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's something for us all to check out and look forward to. So go ahead and click those links in the description box. Go over and stay up to date and be on the lookout, because at the end of the day, we all do need to learn about, ADHD, whether maybe you're not struggling with it, but a loved one, somebody who does, or also maybe just inspired by stories of turning weaknesses or perceived weaknesses into superpowers. So go ahead and check out ADHD Brilliance. It's an amazing thing, and you can also find out more about Sue at the links, as I said. And Sue, it's been a real pleasure having you on today. It's been great to get to know you and learn about the book and hear those writing tips. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Really wonderful questions. I really enjoyed the chat.
I'm glad. And again, to our listeners, if you are inspired by something that Sue said today, check everything out. And remember, your story matters. Your voice has power, and your unique brain, however it's wired, has something extraordinary to offer the world. So keep writing your mission, keep sharing your brilliance, and we'll see you next time on Authors on Mission podcast.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.